We're so happy to be talking to you today.
Yeah,
happy to be here.
well, that's great to hear. Billy, to dive in, this is such a crazy time. It must be for you with the show ending. What has it sort of been like to sort of say this kind of long goodbye to this character that has been such a part of your life now for years? How emotional has it been to sort of go on this ride and ultimately here in the next few weeks say goodbye?
I waited a long time in my life and career for this opportunity. I've been through a lot of trauma, particularly, as everybody knows now, trauma that is parallel to Pray Tells.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, Pray Tell and Pose was a space where I could use my art and proxy for healing. That has happened far beyond anything I could have ever imagined. I went into it knowing that I was going to have to tell this story that I actually lived through. I was so excited to be taken seriously as an actor finally that it didn't compute that everything in my life was being reactivated in the first 2 seasons. Mm. So it's been it's been the pandemic and the space that has allowed for me to take a step back and get conscious about the show, the role, the impact, the purpose, and then engage in a healthy way. And my coming out as positive to the whole world is a part of that healing. Mm-hmm. It's a part of what we never had a chance to process. The antiretroviral drugs came out, and true to American form, everybody moved on as if it never happened. That's what we in America like to do. Mm-hmm. Never happened. And it did happen. And I was there when it happened. And we've had the opportunity to give voice to the voiceless, to make visible the invisible, and remind the world that we can come out on the other side of this better. Mm-hmm. If we choose to.
Yeah.
If it's okay, Billy, I'm curious, what was the turning point where you decided that now is the time that you wanted to be more transparent in public about HIV?
Well, quite frankly, I was going to come out in my book, mm-hmm. which is coming out in October, my memoir in October. And I just happened to be talking to my publicist, and we were, talking about the upcoming year, and how to strategize and stuff with all the things that I'm doing. And I told him that was my intention, and he immediately, kicked into the mode that I pay him for. A lot of money. He earned his keep, because he essentially brought to light um, a bunch of things. My ascent to A-list celebrity status, which I still um, have, uh, I'm still learning how to receive.
Sure.
um, and he made clear that the reason why, once I got my shot, my mainstream shot, the ascent happened so quickly is because of my honesty and my truthfulness and my transparency and my authenticity. And so, his concern was if I play Pray Tell and I go through all the things that Pray Tell is going through on Pose and I wait to disclose my status till later, there will be an opportunity for the cynical cancel culture press to come after me. Because it would appear as if I wasn't being truthful, honest, or authentic or transparent. Not that I need to be, not that I have to be, not that it's anybody's business. So let's make that clear. I made the decision because the decision is about my service. I'm in service. I'm a vessel. My art is my ministry. Therefore, if I'm leading with that, he was right.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because it feels like announcing something like that is where the sort of the business of the business and this very personal thing really intersect. So I'm sure the part of your brain that knows, like, I paid this man to tell me this advice, which is good advice. And then there's also
amazing advice. The only advice.
Yeah.
The only advice, definitely. But there also must be, I imagine, a part of you that, feels vulnerable about announcing that. I mean, there's a humanness to announcing anything to the world, let alone something.
Well, that's the whole point, right?
Yeah.
If one is not visible and vulnerable while doing that, then we all stay stuck in the same place. Like I said, I chose it because it's service. I chose to do it personally. No one was pressuring me. I never had to say anything.
Yeah.
Very true.
I could have just went on with my life and never said anything. But for me, there was a healing inside of the speaking of it out loud. Shame is a silencer. Shame is destructive. Shame had infiltrated every part of my life and had silenced me and was becoming destructive. So my only way out of it, personally, was that.
Yeah.
Because in the naming of it, I released the shame. I faced the trauma head on and moved through it, as opposed to disassociate and compartmentalize, which is the strongest muscle I've ever had. It's time to do something different. The definition of crazy is doing the same thing over and over and expecting something to change. I needed something to change in me. This was a personal decision for me. It didn't have anything to do with anybody on the outside of me, and ultimately, I was doing it anyway in my book in October.
Yeah.
I had already planned to do that. I had already sat on the information for 14 years. So like at this point, it was like 3 or 4 months earlier is fine.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay.
Yeah. It's so interesting because Pose did so much and has done so much for queer representation on television. And I've heard you talk about how when you were younger, you never thought a show like Pose could even exist. And here we are.
There was no context for us to dream.
Yeah.
Right? Because we're taught to dream. Well, at least I will speak for myself. My dreams were always springboarded off of something that I had already seen. I didn't understand how to dream the impossible. Pose has taught me to dream the impossible. Pose has taught me to expect that impossible dreams can and will come true. That has been very profound to me.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. I'm curious though. You look at where we are now, how far we have come. What do you still want to see? What progress is still to be made? And I'm talking in terms of representation on television, in media. We've come so far, but where do we still have to go? You know, you look at where
it's consistency. You know, we need consistency. It's not just one.
Right.
You know, like Kamala, I'm gonna borrow from Kamala Harris. We may be the first, but we're definitely not going to be the last. You know, like once the door is kicked down, those of us who have been imbued with the power must walk through it with purpose and bring everybody who we can with us into the room. You know, into these spaces. I intend on doing it. I'm already doing it. You know, art is very specific, you know, and really wonderful for the world when it's used properly. You know, as artists, we have a divine connection to something greater than ourselves. And when we can understand that and own it, and then walk in that purpose, the world changes. You know, I'm convinced that the world changes. I've seen it. Art has changed me. You know, the power of art has changed me. The power of art has transformed my family and everybody around me. The power, it's powerful. That's why the other side, they, whoever it is, you know, in positions of power, the first thing they take away is the arts.
Right.
In public spaces and forums. That's the first thing they take away because they know the power of it. Because when you engage as an artist, you become a free thinker. And free thinkers aren't followers. They're not sheep.
Yeah.
They're not going to believe the things that half the people in our country have believed the last 4 years that led to January 6th. You won't be able to get that going when you actually train people to think for themselves. You know?
Yeah.
Art does that.
Billy, you mentioned that you are walking through that door. You're you know, the tide, you know, raising all ships. I understand if you can't, you know, get into specifics about what kind of projects you're moving into, but I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about like what you're kind of interested in exploring in your next projects.
Well, I'm directing a film this summer called What If for Orion Pictures. I'm in pre-production right now. It's about a Black transgender girl in high school in Pittsburgh. She gets a boyfriend and it's a rom-com. And, you know, there's no, you know, the trauma is very minimal. You know, there's no trans violence porn. There's no, you know, trans sex worker porn, which is so trauma porn, what we're used to. You know, it's really a coming of age story about a girl.
Yeah. Is that how important is that to you, telling these stories from the perspective of this is just any other girl? I mean, there is so much discussion about trauma porn and making things difficult to watch and violent to maybe seem important. How important is it to you in the art that you want to make, so to tell these stories from sort of more of a natural kind of perspective?
Well, it's all important. You know, all versions of it are important. when you're a first, though, the story has to be presented as such. You know, the work I'm working on is aspirational.
Mm.
What if is aspirational? That's the power of art.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it happens. The normalization of transgender people does exist and happen on our planet, but not very often. You know, we have 170 bills going through, you know, our governments in America, our local governments in America that attack transgender and LGBTQ rights. So this piece is aspirational. This is to, you know, what if is to show the world what it should be looking like.
Right. Right.
I almost wonder if that is the next step in this representation.
It has to be.
You're right. It's not just, it's about joy. It's about presenting
Correct.
joy, Black trans joy,
Correct.
Black female, you know? Yeah, absolutely.
It has to be. You know, people have to see it, even if it's aspirational.
Mm.
People have to see it to believe it. You know, how many Black men played the president on screen before we had one?
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's the media.
There were a lot of them.
It seems silly to say out loud, I guess.
It's not silly, and that's what we have to stop saying. We, as artists, have to stop saying that. It's not silly. It actually isn't. It's the real thing. It's the truth. That's what art is. No, I will not shut up and sing. No, I will not shut up and dance. No, I will not shut up and dribble. No, I won't. Yeah. What we do and who we are is important. Every bit of it. Every bit of it.
Yeah.
From the comedies, from the most ridiculous comedies to the darkest of dramas and everything in between, the most saccharine of bubblegum pop to the deepest of protest music and everything in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, we have to understand the power ourselves, which is why I challenge, you know, the language sometimes. Yeah. You know, it's like, me showing up in a dress at the Oscars is not me being a clown.
Mm-hmm.
It's me using my art to change the conversation.
And to create the conversation.
Create it. Yes, thank you.
Push people aside at the table. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it really is. I mean, it's a incredibly vital and valuable contribution to queer livelihood, to society. Absolutely. No, it really is.
Yeah.
One of my favorite quotes. I'm gonna read it to you. I'm gonna find it right quick.
Please.
Read it to you. I should just
like live,
memorize it.
Love.
In
this house, we drink good wine. Did you bring any?
Toni Morrison says this is precisely the time when artists go to work. There's no time for despair. There's no place for self-pity. There's no need for silence. There's no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. She's speaking from a writer's perspective. I'm speaking from the creative perspective at large.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to wrap up, Billy, I would love to ask you about, as we return to sort of some sense of normalcy here, what sort of concerns do you maybe have about live theater, Broadway, and just sort of getting back to sort of that sort of artistry? Do you have any concerns about what the future holds for live theater?
I haven't really thought about it that much because I've been trying to be present, but I believe it will come back in time. I believe it will have even more of an impact than it's ever had, because sometimes you have to have something taken away to understand its importance. On and on it seems to go, but you don't know what you got till it's gone. Like that's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm really excited to see how our youth come back into the world and engage differently. Hopefully they'll step out from behind their devices and start engaging in person.
Yeah.
Imagine that.
Critically. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's like it's there, you know, we are at a crossroads, a reckoning. You know, my prayer is that we all come out of this better. As we see, some of us are already not. That's not our concern. Our concern should always be to keep it moving forward. Frederick Douglass says, eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. It's time to be vigilant. It's time to be love warriors. And like my grandmother used to say, yes, love, always love. And sometimes tough love needs to be employed. It's time for some tough love.
Yeah.
When they go low, we go high. Absolutely. It's time to discuss and redefine what that looks like. What does going high look like now? Because the version that we did before created a space where the shit didn't stick.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I hear you.
What is the difference going to be this time? And how do we band together and do it together?
Right.
All of us.
Yeah. There's a lot of work to be done, but
there's a lot.
Yeah, but
yeah.
there
always has.
Well, of course, yeah, of course.
You know, I mean, that's the part, and that's what when I speak about the language changing, I think, you know, civil rights movement up until George Floyd, there, for me at least, you know, there was this construct that we arrive at the promised land. That the promised land is something that you work towards and you arrive at, and then everything is fine. We got a Black president. Everybody thought it was fine. No. We have to change the language. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. From the moment you come to this planet to the moment you leave, you got to be vigilant.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's all. If everybody was approaching it from that space, then I think people would begin to understand how to take breaks, how to self-care and get back in, how to, you know, like everybody's exhausted.
Yeah.
You know, because the work is like, oh, we're going to arrive somewhere. It's like, no, take a breath, take a break. Let somebody come in and step in. You know what I mean? Like, that's how we have to start thinking of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Billy, it's been truly inspiring and invigorating to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate your words and your spirit. And we'll catch you next time. Thanks again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Have
Billy.
a wonderful day.
Okay. Bye.